He was not a patient man. He liked order, predictability, clean lines between what was allowed and what wasn't. Rules mattered to him, not because he enjoyed control, but because without rules things got messy. And messy things usually turned dangerous in ways people didn't notice until it was too late. That was what he believed. That was how he lived. Until the dragon baby arrived. Started small. Too small to even feel important. He had set out a strict feeding schedule on day 1. 3 meals. No exceptions. No snacking. No extra portions. No emotional bargaining. He even wrote it down on a small board near the kitchen. Rule 1. Food only at designated times. Rule 2. No taking from the kitchen outside feeding. Rule 3. Do not encourage bad habits. He felt satisfied looking at it. Clear. Controlled. Safe. The dragon baby had blinked at the board once. Then sneezed at it. That should have been the first warning sign. The first violation happened on the 3rd night. He woke up at exactly 2:17 a.m. because something in his kitchen clinked. Not loudly, just confidently, like it belonged there. He sat up slowly in bed. "No," he whispered. Another clink. Then a faint scratching sound. He got up immediately. The apartment was dark, except for the faint glow of the streetlights through the window. And there, on the counter, was the dragon baby, standing proudly next to an open container of food, holding a piece of it in its tiny mouth like it had just discovered treasure. He froze. "Are you serious right now?" The dragon looked at him, paused, then chewed, slowly, deliberately, like it was making a point. He stared. "That's not your mealtime." The dragon tilted its head, then took another bite. No panic, no guilt, just absolute disregard for his authority. He walked closer slowly. "Rule 1, he said firmly, pointing toward the board in the kitchen. The dragon glanced at it, then back at him, then back at the food, then continued eating. He blinked. "You're ignoring me." The dragon made a small sound. Not aggression, not fear. Something dangerously close to amusement. That was the moment he realized something horrifying. He didn't think the rules applied to it. He tried again the next night, locked the cabinets, moved the food higher, even reinforced the kitchen door slightly. He was determined. This was training, structure, necessary discipline for something that would eventually grow into something much larger and far more powerful. He went to bed feeling victorious. He woke up to chewing sounds again, this time coming from the top of the refrigerator. He just stood there in silence. "How?" The dragon looked down at him mid-bite. Blink, chew, swallow. No explanation, just confidence. By night 5 he was tired, not angry anymore, just deeply confused. He sat at the table watching the dragon sit comfortably on the counter with stolen food like it had defeated a complex puzzle. "I made rules," he said slowly. The dragon licked its claws. He sighed. "You understand rules." The dragon looked at him, then lightly tapped the counter twice, like it was knocking on the concept of rules themselves, and then casually knocked a spoon off the edge. It fell with a loud clink. The dragon watched it fall, then looked back at him. He stared. "That's not rebellion," he muttered. "That's just disrespect." The dragon made a soft sound again, almost like laughter. He started adapting. Food moved. Timing changed. He even tried subtle psychological reinforcement, placing food only when the dragon behaved correctly. It worked for approximately 1 day. Then he woke up to find the dragon sitting on the table next to a perfectly untouched meal, and his midnight snack container mysteriously empty. The dragon looked at him like nothing happened. He blinked slowly. "You're doing this on purpose now." The dragon tilted its head, chewed loudly. The breaking point came on night 7. He deliberately left a small plate of food out as a test, then pretended to sleep. He watched through half-closed eyes as the dragon crept in. Slow, careful, not afraid, just strategic. It looked at him once, paused, then proceeded to take the entire plate, drag it gently off the table, and sit beside his bed while eating it. Right there. In plain view, as if to say, you can watch. It doesn't change anything. He sat up slowly. You are unbelievable. The dragon paused mid-bite, looked at him, swallowed, then gently pushed the empty plate toward him like a returned formality. He stared at it, then at the dragon. You're mocking me. The dragon blinked, then very casually leaned against his leg, as if the conversation was over. That night, he didn't rewrite the rules. He just sat there for a long time, looking at the empty plate, then at the small creature leaning against him like it owned the space entirely. I don't think you're going to learn discipline, he admitted quietly. The dragon made a soft sound, almost satisfied. He exhaled slowly. But I think you're learning trust instead. The dragon didn't steal the last snack that night. Not because of rules, not because of structure, but because it had already decided something else mattered more. And he finally understood something too. Sometimes, control doesn't raise something strong. Sometimes, it just teaches something when it doesn't need to steal anymore. The next phase of the rules experiment, as he started calling it in his head, didn't go any better. In fact, it got worse. Not for the dragon. For him. He upgraded the system. Not emotionally. Not impulsively. Logically. If the dragon was learning to bypass simple restrictions, then the problem wasn't discipline, it was structure design. So he changed the environment. Food was now stored in sealed containers. Cabinets had child-proof locks. The fridge handle was modified so it required a specific motion to open. He even tested it himself twice just to make sure it worked. It did. Perfectly. He went to bed that night with a quiet sense of victory. Not pride exactly, just satisfaction. Let's see you outsmart that, he muttered. At 1:48 a.m., he woke up. Not because of noise this time, because of silence. Too much silence. He sat up slowly. That's never good, he said out loud. The apartment felt wrong. Not broken. Not disturbed. Just suspiciously calm. He got up and walked toward the kitchen, each step slower than the last. Because experience had taught him one thing very quickly. When the dragon was quiet, it meant it was thinking. And when it was thinking, it meant he was already late. The kitchen was intact. Nothing broken. Nothing overturned. Everything exactly where it should be. For a moment, he actually relaxed. Finally, he whispered. Then he saw it. The fridge door was closed. Locked. Perfect. Unmoved. He frowned slightly. Okay, he said slowly. That's new. Then he heard a sound behind him. A soft tap. He turned. The dragon was sitting on the counter, staring at him. No food in sight. No chaos. Just watching. And for some reason, that was worse. He narrowed his eyes. What did you do? The dragon blinked once, then slowly lifted one claw and tapped the cabinet lock. Click. His stomach dropped slightly. No. Another tap. Click. He walked closer slowly. Tell me you didn't. The dragon turned its head slightly toward the pantry. He opened it. Empty. Not damaged. Not forced open. Just emptied. Cleanly. Efficiently. Like a small, extremely determined thief had spent the entire night treating his security system like a puzzle instead of a barrier. He stood there in silence. You solved it, he said finally. The dragon made a small sound. Not pride. Not guilt. Just acknowledgement. He exhaled slowly. You are absolutely not normal. The dragon blinked, then calmly sat down like the conversation was over. He tried something new after that. Negotiation. Not because he thought it would work, but because nothing else was. He placed a small bowl on the counter. Looked at the dragon. You eat from here, he said slowly. A pause. Not from the cabinets. Not at night. Not from anywhere you feel like it. The dragon tilted its head. Studied the bowl. Then him. Then the bowl again. He added cautiously, and I don't chase you around the kitchen anymore. That got its attention. The dragon blinked, slowly walked closer, sniffed the bowl, then looked up at him again. He waited. For defiance. For theft. for laughter apparently, if that was even possible. Instead, the dragon gently nudged the bowl, then sat down beside it. He froze. "Wait," he said quietly. "That's it." The dragon began eating, calmly, from the bowl, within the agreed terms. He stared at it for a long moment. "You're only difficult when you don't respect the system," he muttered. The dragon didn't respond. It just continued eating like it had won something. Later that night, he sat at the table watching it. No chaos, no sneaking, no stolen midnight snacks, just quiet eating under negotiated rules. He leaned back slightly. "You know," he said softly, "I thought I was teaching you discipline." A pause. "But I think you were teaching me something else." The dragon looked up briefly, chewed, swallowed, then returned to its food. He smiled faintly. "That rules only work when both sides agree they matter." The dragon made a soft sound, almost approving. He shook his head slightly. "Unbelievable." But this time, there was no frustration in his voice, only acceptance. Because somewhere between stolen snacks, broken systems, and silent negotiations, he had stopped trying to control the dragon and started learning how it actually thought. Not like a pet, not like a threat, but like something intelligent enough to decide which rules were worth respecting, and which ones were just suggestions waiting to be tested. The agreement didn't last as cleanly as he hoped. Of course it didn't. That would have been too easy. First, everything seemed stable. The dragon ate from the bowl. It stopped raiding cabinets. It even, on 2 separate occasions, waited near the counter instead of taking matters into its own claws. He started to relax again. That was his mistake. The problem began with timing. Not breaking rules, just bending them, subtly. He noticed it on the 4th night of the new system. He had gone to bed early, exhausted from work, confident that for once the kitchen would survive the night untouched. He woke up at 3:06 a.m., not to noise, not to chaos, but to a feeling. That quiet instinct that tells you something in your house is thinking when it shouldn't be. He sat up slowly. "Please don't be doing what I think you're doing," he muttered. He got up and walked toward the kitchen, and stopped in the doorway. The dragon was sitting on the counter, perfectly still, staring at the bowl. The bowl was empty. He frowned. "We already ate." The dragon blinked, slowly looked at him, then looked at the bowl again, then gently tapped it. Once. He narrowed his eyes. "No." Another tap. He walked closer. "That's not a suggestion." The dragon tilted its head slightly, then very deliberately licked the inside of the empty bowl. He exhaled through his nose. "You are not hungry." The dragon paused, looked at him, then at the fridge, then back at him. He pointed at the fridge. "No." The dragon blinked, then slowly turned its head away, like it was accepting defeat. He relaxed slightly. "Good," he said quietly, then turned around to go back to bed. He made it exactly 3 steps. Before he heard it. Click. He froze, slowly turned his head. The fridge door was open. "You've got to be kidding me." The dragon was already inside. Not aggressively, not rushing, just calmly rearranging the contents like it had discovered a library that no one had properly cataloged. He walked over slowly. "How did you even—" "I locked that." The dragon pulled out a small item, looked at it, then placed it back in a different position, like it was correcting a mistake. He stared. "You're reorganizing my fridge." The dragon paused, looked at him, blink, then continued. He stood there for a full minute just watching, then sighed. "This is not stealing," he muttered. "It's administrative sabotage." The dragon made a soft sound, almost satisfied. He crossed his arms. "You realize you're supposed to be the one learning rules." The dragon finally stopped, looked at him properly now, then lightly pushed a piece of food toward him from inside the fridge, as if offering compensation. He blinked. "Are you bribing me?" The dragon tilted its head. He shook his head slowly. "Unbelievable." But he didn't stop it. By the 7th night, he gave up pretending control mattered. Not completely, just selectively. He removed the locks from the cabinets. Not because he trusted the dragon, but because he realized something important. It was not breaking rules randomly. It was testing whether they made sense. And worse, it was learning when they didn't. He sat at the table later that night, watching it move around the kitchen freely again. Not chaotic now, not destructive, just deliberate, intentional, like it was participating in the system instead of fighting it. He spoke quietly. "You know what you're doing now, don't you?" The dragon paused mid-step, looked at him, then continued walking. No answer needed. He sighed. "Yeah," he said softly. "You do." A pause. Then he added, "And you're waiting for me to catch up." The dragon stopped, turned its head slightly, just enough to acknowledge him, then went back to its path. That night there were no stolen snacks, no broken rules, no hidden victories, but something else happened instead. He left a small piece of food on the counter without saying anything. Not as a rule, not as permission, just an option. The dragon saw it, walked over, and ate it, not because it was told to, not because it was hidden or earned or taken, but because, for the first time, both of them understood the same thing at the same time. Rules didn't matter more than understanding did. And understanding was finally starting to go both ways. The real problem started the next morning. Not with stolen food, not with broken locks, not even with any clever midnight administrative sabotage like before. This time, it was quiet, too quiet. He noticed it before he even opened his eyes fully. The apartment felt wrong in a way he couldn't immediately name. Not empty, not damaged, just missing motion. He sat up slowly. "That's never good," he muttered. The kitchen was empty. No dragon on the counter. No sound of small claws tapping against tile. No curious shifting of objects like the world was being reorganized for its own benefit. He frowned immediately. "Hey?" he called out. No response. He walked through the living room. Nothing. Bathroom. Empty. He stopped in the hallway. "You are not funny," he said under his breath. Still nothing. That's when the old instinct came back. Not fear exactly. Something sharper. The realization that something small and fast had the ability to disappear without explanation. He checked the usual places first. Behind furniture. Under the table. Near the windows. Still nothing. His frustration started to rise. "You can't just break all the rules and then vanish," he muttered. No answer. Just silence. He stood in the center of the room for a moment, thinking. Then he noticed something. The window was open. Not wide. Just slightly. Enough. His chest tightened slightly. "No," he said quietly. He moved fast now. Crossed the room. Looked outside. The alley below was empty. Cold morning air drifting upward. No movement. No sign. Nothing. He exhaled slowly. "You were getting too confident," he muttered. A pause. Then softer. "That's what this is, isn't it?" Silence answered him. He grabbed his jacket and stepped outside immediately. Not thinking through consequences. Not planning. Just moving. Because for the first time since he'd met it, the idea of it not being there felt wrong in a way rules had never prepared him for. The search didn't take long. He found it less than 2 blocks away, sitting on the edge of a low wall near an alley entrance. Completely still, watching something in the distance. He slowed immediately. "There you are," he said quietly. The dragon didn't react right away, then slowly turned its head. No fear, no panic, just awareness. He walked closer. "What are you doing out here?" The dragon blinked once, then looked back toward the alley. He followed its gaze. Nothing, just the usual city noise, distant movement, unremarkable life. He frowned slightly. "You left for this?" The dragon made a small sound. Not confirmation, not denial, just acknowledgement. He crossed his arms. "You don't get to just wander off because you're curious," he said quietly. The dragon looked at him, held his gaze, unbothered. That irritated him more than he expected. "You know there are rules," he added. The dragon blinked. Then, very slowly, turned its head back toward the alley. Ignoring him completely, he exhaled sharply. Unbelievable. He crouched down slightly. Not aggressive. Just closer. What's out there? He asked. The dragon didn't answer. Just watched. Focused. Like something important was happening just beyond human perception. He followed its gaze again. Still nothing. You're seeing something I'm not, he muttered. The dragon made a soft sound. Then shifted slightly, as if deciding something. Then stood up, and walked back toward him. Not hurried. Not reluctant. Just done. He blinked. That's it. The dragon reached him. Paused. Then lightly bumped against his leg. He frowned. You went all the way out here to look at whatever that was, and now you're just done? The dragon tilted its head, as if the answer was obvious. He sighed. You are impossible. They walked back together in silence. The dragon stayed close the entire way, not running ahead, not drifting away, just walking beside him like it had decided the exploration phase was complete. He glanced down at it once. You didn't run away, he said quietly. The dragon didn't look up. He continued. You just checked something. A pause. And came back. The dragon made a small sound. Not correction. Not confirmation. Just agreement with reality. He shook his head slightly. You're not breaking rules, he muttered. You're testing boundaries. The dragon blinked, then bumped him again lightly, as if to say, yes, and you're part of the system I'm testing. He didn't respond immediately, then exhaled. Yeah, he said softly. I think I am. That night, he didn't close the window immediately. He left it open for a while. The dragon sat beside it, not waiting, not searching, just present. He spoke quietly after a long silence. You know, he said, I thought rules would teach you how to behave. The dragon glanced at him. He leaned back slightly. But I think you taught me something else instead. A pause. Rules don't matter if there's no understanding behind them. The dragon didn't respond. But it didn't move away either. And for the first time since all this began, he wasn't trying to control what it did anymore. He was starting to understand why it did it. The next change didn't come from the dragon. Came from him, and he didn't notice it at first. He started leaving the window open more often. Not out of carelessness, but out of observation. At least, that's what he told himself. The dragon didn't try to leave anymore. Not really. It still looked outside sometimes, still watched the world beyond the apartment with that quiet focus. But the urgency was gone. It wasn't searching for escape. It was just aware of options. That difference mattered more than he expected. One night, he realized something strange. He had stopped checking if the dragon was where it was supposed to be. There were no supposed to be locations anymore. It just existed in the space it chose. Kitchen, window, couch, sometimes near him, sometimes across the room. And every position felt intentional, not controlled. That realization made him pause. When did that happen? He muttered to himself. The dragon, lying on the couch, flicked an ear slightly, but didn't respond. The real test came later that week. He had to leave the apartment for a few hours. Work, necessary, normal life things that didn't stop just because something unusual had moved into his space. He hesitated at the door longer than he expected to. The dragon was on the floor behind him, watching, calm. I'll be back, he said almost automatically, then stopped, because he realized something else. He wasn't saying it to reassure the dragon. He was saying it to reassure himself. The dragon tilted its head slightly, not anxious, not clinging, just listening. He frowned a little. You're not reacting, he said. The dragon blinked. He sighed. Right? Because you've stopped assuming I won't. That landed differently than it should have. He didn't like how accurate it felt. When he returned later that day, nothing was broken. Nothing stolen. Nothing rearranged beyond recognition. The apartment looked exactly as he left it. Except for one thing. The dragon was sitting by the door. Waiting. Not in panic. Not in distress. Just there. As if it had decided that was the appropriate place to be when he returned. He stopped in the doorway. "You didn't move," he said quietly. The dragon stood up immediately. Walked over. Pressed lightly against his leg. Not desperate. Not afraid. Just confirming. He exhaled slowly. "Yeah," he murmured. "You know I come back now." The dragon made a small sound. Almost like agreement. Almost like correction. He frowned slightly. "No," he said after a moment. "Not come back." He paused. "Stay." The dragon looked up at him. Still. Present. Understanding without language. That night something shifted again. Not dramatically. Not visibly. Just in the way they existed in the same space. He sat at the table working. The dragon lay nearby. No checking. No tracking. No silent calculation of risk every time he moved. Just rest. He noticed it after a while. "You're not watching me anymore," he said softly. The dragon didn't look up. He leaned back slightly. "That's new." A pause. "That means you trust the pattern." The dragon made a quiet sound. Not agreement with him. Agreement with reality. Later, he stood by the window again. The city outside was the same as always. Unchanged. Unaware. He spoke quietly, almost to himself. "You were never really breaking my rules," he said. A pause. "You were testing whether they meant anything." The dragon shifted slightly behind him. He continued. "And I kept changing them until they finally did." Silence followed. Not uncomfortable. Just complete. He smiled faintly. "That's not discipline," he admitted. "That's communication I didn't understand at the time." The dragon walked closer and bumped against his side lightly. He didn't move away. Didn't correct it. Just stayed. And for the first time, the rules didn't feel like control anymore. They felt like something both of them had agreed on without ever needing to say it out loud. Not because one of them obeyed. Not because one of them enforced. But because both of them had finally learned the same thing. A rule only matters when it respects what's actually standing in front of you. The problem with understanding something too well is that it starts changing everything else you thought you knew. He noticed it in himself first. Not in the dragon. In him. He stopped thinking of the rules as his rules. That was the shift he didn't expect. At first, they had been about control. Safety. Structure. Keeping something unpredictable from becoming dangerous. But somewhere along the way, that idea quietly fell apart. Not because the dragon broke it. Because it didn't behave like something that needed to be controlled in the first place. One evening, he found himself sitting on the floor instead of the chair. No reason. Just closer. The dragon was nearby, half curled on the rug, watching him with that calm attention it had developed over time. He spoke without looking up at first. "I used to think you were just breaking everything I said," he said quietly. A pause. "But you weren't breaking it." He finally looked at it. "You were testing whether it was worth following." The dragon blinked once. Slow. Measured. He leaned back slightly. "And I kept rebuilding it every time you proved it didn't make sense." Silence. Not tension. Just understanding hanging in the air. The dragon shifted closer. Not sudden. Not needy. Just deliberate proximity. He didn't move away. Didn't adjust it. Just let it happen. That alone would have been unthinkable a week ago. Now it felt normal. Later that night, something unusual happened. It rained. Not heavily. Just enough to soften the outside world. He opened the window without thinking. The dragon immediately looked toward it. But didn't move. That was new. Before, it would have gone immediately. Curious. Alert. Always engaging the outside world like it owed it answers. Now, it waited. He noticed. Of course he did. "You're not going," he said softly. The dragon made a small sound. Not refusal. Not agreement. Just acknowledgement of choice existing. He nodded slightly. "You're checking me first now," he murmured. The dragon blinked. Then looked at him. Waiting. He exhaled. "That's new too." A pause. "That means I became part of your decision process." The dragon tilted its head slightly. as if confirming that was always the case. It just hadn't mattered enough to notice before. He stood up slowly and walked to the window. The rain was light outside, the city blurred by distance and reflection. He leaned on the frame. "You know what I realized?" he said quietly. The dragon stayed where it was, but its attention shifted fully to him. He continued, "You never actually cared about the rules themselves." A pause. "You cared about whether I was consistent." Silence. Then a soft sound from the dragon. Not correction. Agreement. He smiled faintly. "Yeah," he said. "I see it now." The dragon finally moved closer, standing beside him at the window. Not looking out first. Looking at him first. That alone said more than anything else. He noticed that too. "So that's what changed," he murmured. The dragon shifted its gaze briefly to the rain, then back to him. No urgency, no demand, just shared presence. He leaned slightly back against the wall. "I stopped treating you like something that needed fixing," he said quietly. A pause. "And you stopped treating me like something that might disappear." The dragon made a soft sound again, this one quieter than before, almost satisfied. He let out a slow breath. "That's not discipline," he said again, almost amused now. "That's trust built out of repeated proof instead of instructions." The dragon blinked slowly, then settled beside him. Close. Not touching fully, but close enough that distance no longer meant uncertainty. He didn't move away this time, didn't correct the spacing, just accepted it. Outside, the rain continued. Inside, nothing demanded attention anymore. No rules to enforce, no behavior to correct, no fear of what might happen next. Just two minds that had finally stopped trying to dominate each other's understanding and started building something that didn't need permission to exist.